Cool. Right. Let's make a start. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to this month's Adventurous Inc. Not live conversation. We're doing things slightly differently this month. I'm joined by Jenny Tuff and Joe Moseley. Jenny is currently on tour. So while we go live to have a conversation about this evening, Jenny's going to be live on stage with the Sidetrack tour in Inverness. So things are slightly different. So normally at this point I'd be saying, and throw your questions into the chat and we'll ask them of Jenny and Joe. Don't do that. Don't throw any questions into that. It's me. I'm going to ask the questions on your behalf. So that's the way it's going to work. Joe's going to keep them, and Jenny will be. Jenny's a little bit a Boolean self. Boolean? Is that a word? It is now. So I'm sure you understand. Joe is our guest curator this month. So I asked Joe what book she wanted to choose, and oddly, we were both looking at featuring solo. So there you go. Great minds think alike. If you don't know who Joe is, she's a filmmaker, paddleboarder, best-selling author, a single mom. Joe didn't properly get the adventure bug until she was about 50, coming from 50. But her goal is to share the joy of outdoors for our physical and mental well-being. And she says we're never too old, do something wild, and it's never too late to make a difference. So, Joe, thank you for choosing this book. What a fab book.
Yeah, it was just so wonderful, wasn't it? Because we were going down another line, and then I just messaged you and I said, what about Jenny Tuff's solo? And you were like, oh my God, I've just been thinking about that too. And it was just so serendipitous, wasn't it? And it was just like it was meant to be. It was just meant to be. So I'm just giddy with excitement.
I'm not the only giddy one. That's good. I like having a fellow giddy idiot. Not that you're an idiot, Joe. Not that you're an idiot. So for those of you who don't know, Jenny is an endurance athlete, best known for running and cycling some of the world's most challenging events. And obviously solo narrates some really interesting and John and I were talking earlier, frankly terrifying adventures. But there's more to it. It's a nice personal story about emotions that maybe holding them back. And so she chose to run across the mountains on 6 continents to get over that and then write a book about it, like you. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for including me, guys. I feel so touched that you both chose my book. I'm really humbled.
Well, it's just it's just such a great, and I think you do that wonderful thing of the incredible adventure bit and the really touching bit of being open and vulnerable, which is kind of hard to do, isn't it? And that's certainly what drew me to it. So I'm gonna try not to ask all the same old questions, but I have to start with this one, and I'm sure you've had it a million times, Jenny. Do you believe in nominative determination? Like with a name like Jenny Tuff, you were destined to be an adventurer, weren't you?
Yeah, I definitely got lucky with that name. Yeah, maybe it pushed me, but it's pronounced Tuch in Scotland, so it's fake tough. Yeah, I got lucky. That's all I can say. And people keep thinking it's just my Instagram name and that I'm just really arrogant and I name myself that as a nickname. It's not a nickname. I can show you my passport. It's real.
And I looked at the book how you stayed in the hut with Mr. Strong as well. So you had Strong and Tough in one place. Completely random.
I know. Yeah. So I was trapped alone. Well, not trapped alone. That sounds really creepy. I sheltered from a storm in a hut in New Zealand, and the other hiker sheltering from the storm, his last name was Strong, and we had a good giggle when we signed our guidebook in the morning.
I can imagine. Well, when I started chatting to Joe about why she'd chosen Joe, one of the things you were talking about was genuinely how inspired you'd been by Jenny. It's not, you'd come across it long before the book came out, hadn't you? And been thoroughly inspired in all your adventures.
Yeah, so I first saw Jenny speak as part of the Kendal Mountain Film tour, and I think it was 2018, and I had I wasn't thinking of doing anything, and obviously I've done nothing comparison to Jenny, but I just remember sort of coming on stage and just talking about and I guess you just had done Kyrgyzstan then, like it was your first one, and I remember just thinking, wow, maybe I could do something little. Do you know what I mean? Maybe. And I think that's what is so great about Jenny, is that she does these amazing things, but she also just inspires you to think, well, maybe you could just do something for yourself that fits your life, with different responsibilities and different things that we're interested in. So yeah, so for me, 2018 and then 2019, I did my little coast to coast with Fritz, who's like a good friend, and so I've just sort of followed Jenny all along and just loved the book, and just love just this way of being able to show these massive adventures and then bringing it down to a really personal, intimate way of describing it. So for example, this morning I was just flicking through about Bolivia and being really at peace in your tent and with your hot chocolate, but then the mountain ranges and then crossing this river and then this light coming, and I was like, oh god, and then you sort of ended it with it, and it was an epping firefly, and I think that's what you do, is you take us on this amazing journey, but you take us with you, and it goes really expansive and quite scary, right down to very intimate, like you're with you on the journey, or you're snuggled up in your tent, or just listening to the things that people say to you on different scales. We've all had those, I certainly had, on my coast to coast, well, you can't do that, or that's too hard for you. Or even as I was doing it, and you had this, didn't you? You'd already done some challenges and people still said you couldn't do it. Like, well, I've just done this. But even then people were telling me halfway through the coast to coast I couldn't do what I would already done. But it still happens to you. And so I think we can all relate to those intimate moments and those things that we've had told to us, and still doing it anyway, and knowing that other women have been told that, and we can still go and pursue our dreams. So yeah, very giddy, very, very inspired personally, and just really grateful for everything you write about. So I'll try not to be so giddy. I'm really sorry.
It really means the world to me. I mean, I didn't write the book or do the challenges so that people could be in awe of me. I mean, that'd be a really good thing to do. I was going to do those things anyways. The point of the book is that I want other people to know that they can do hard things. I don't come from a traditional athlete path. I wasn't the likely candidate for a first expedition kind of stuff. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. That's what I want people to know, is that anyone, and same with you, Joe, with your messaging, that it's not too late, that like it's not like if you aren't this type of person, then adventure just isn't for you. I think that we're both trying to share in our own ways, is there's the world's out there for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And you say that at the beginning, you just weren't, you saw all these other kind of types of people and you didn't feel like that you were part of it, and it wasn't, but yeah, you were. And that just makes people think, oh, I don't think I'm part of that group, or that I can do it. And then, oh, but maybe I can. I think that's it, isn't it? I don't sense that you necessarily want to inspire, but that you just want to encourage us to see within that we're already tough.
Yeah, exactly.
We're already there. Yeah. It's not look at me, it's look at what we can do, so.
Yeah, and there's different ways of being tough. And I think that's something that I'm really curious and really excited about with people, is that I think the traditional outdoor industry and the books that you'll find in the genre traditionally have been one type of character, and they express one type of toughness, which is like conquer the mountain, kind of narrative, man versus nature.
Yeah.
And that is a type of toughness, and I'm not, no shade on those guys. I mean, a little bit of shade if I'm honest, but there are different ways of being tough. And I think that's something that I want people to know, is that just because they don't fit that exact narrative, they're not that kind of chest beating tough guy. There are still things about you that could be really interesting for you to explore if you go chase your comfort zone, but do it in your own way. And that's kind of the point I make with the challenge being it's a really unique challenge. I know it's weird running across a mountain range on every continent. It doesn't roll off the tongue. You know, it's not like I climbed Everest. Like that's what you should traditionally do if you want a public speaking career, is just climb Everest.
Yeah.
But you know, it was a challenge that was meaningful to me, and I did it in a way that was meaningful to me. And it doesn't have to stack up. It doesn't have to match those guys. And I think that's something I didn't know when I started in the industry and I started public speaking. I thought I would have to find a way to fit in with them. And instantly I was like, well, I'm never going to fit in with them. I mean, I haven't got a beard and I wasn't in the Marines. So where's my, yeah, all right, but you know, where's my place in this? And so I just kind of realized, well, you're just going to have to carve out your own space and just, you know, be who you are. And there will be people who don't get it, but then there will be people who do, that never got what was being shown to them before. And yeah, and that's something, Joe, that's why I admire you straight back, is like you're doing that. You're, you know, representing a group that have not had a voice in this industry. And so there are tons of people that finally see themselves in this world, that finally see that, you know, the outdoors are for them. It's not just for that one group that have been doing the same narrative.
Yeah, and I love the way that you created, because I have like a kind of walking, hiking, paddleboarding, swimming kind of thing I want to do next year solo, and I love the way that you just created, not just, but you created something completely unique, and I'm thinking, yeah, when I sort of explain it to people, it's like, well, has someone else done that before? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's not about that. It's about creating something that means something to me, and that hopefully other people might go, oh, that sounds fun. Maybe I could create something that means something to me as well. And yeah, and it's that difference between fitting in and belonging, isn't it? And if you try and fit in, it's not right. But if you belong to yourself and belong to your dreams, then you will just attract people like fireflies, but not scary fireflies. You know, I think maybe I'll just, that's my new mantra, effing fireflies. You know, you'll attract people to you that you don't, and you never know, do you? You never know who's watching and who's listening, and who will come away from an event and go, oh, that's just sparked an interest, that I can do something that isn't a set adventure challenge, but I can create something for myself. And that gives us so much more freedom to love it, you know, completely.
Yeah, so well said. And I've always believed that adventure should be creative, not competitive. And I feel like the mainstream that we're seeing is a really competitive, you know, it's, you know, when I say I'm going to do something, people say, well, how fast are you going to do it? And like, what's the record on that? Well, I don't care what the record is. You know, you are allowed to just go outside and it not be something that makes it onto a list. Like, you know, and bringing creativity into it and having that be your focus rather than the competition. Like, how does this stack up to what other adventurers have done? You know, like, bringing your creativity into it, as you say, like that's where you're going to find yourself and be yourself, and that will attract the right people and inspire more people, rather than the fitting in and just trying to follow the list and be competitive and set an FT or whatever.
It's
fine, it's just not for me, that world.
It's such a freedom, isn't it, just to be able to say, I'm going to do what I want to do. And you totally, so when I saw you speak at, I mean, it's really bizarre, the serendipity, because when I saw you speak at the Wild Writers Festival, so Tim, Jenny and I was speaking in the morning with my friend Siobhan, and then my other friend Sarah. And so Sarah and Siobhan are both in their 60s. I'm almost 60. We were talking about our adventures. And then in the evening, Jenny was obviously the key speaker. And I just videoed this little bit where she talked about being solo, which I put up on my Instagram, and what it, you know, what it does in terms of gives you that freedom to make all the decisions on your own and really rely on yourself. And so I just love that. And I kind of have kept watching that video loads and loads. And I didn't know you were going to say that. I just put the camera like this and videoed it. And for me at my age, like, so you talk about becoming an adult and making those choices. And for me, kind of like 30 years older, it's like, wow, adventure is, now that my boys are grown up and doing things, and as long as my dad's okay and all those other, you know, people I need to worry about and care about, as long as they're fine, I get to just choose to do stuff for myself. It's like it's sort of the same feeling that I can just go and thinking about next year and just choose it for myself and not have to think of other people. So I think even though we're massively a big age difference, and I'm not an ultra runner, but I really relate to that idea of just making choices when nobody else is checking your choices. Like you say, on like when you're running races, on your cycling races, people are, checking and watching and caring for you. But on these, you make all the choices and you make all the decisions. And if it goes wrong, it's on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh yeah, I don't know what that feels like anymore. I don't know what that freedom and responsibility obviously feels like anymore. And it's just really exciting to watch you do that and see how you make those choices. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's especially interesting for women because, of course, I mean, you know this life better than I do, that women are the caregivers. Women never get to be first.
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Yeah.
I think things are really changing for us, but there are a lot of women that they'll hear, oh wait, if I go on this hiking trip, you mean it's just going to be me and I'm not going to have to prioritize anyone else's comfort? Like, sign me up.
Yeah. And I think that's why so many women in their late 50s and 60s, 70s go off and do these things and just relish that chance, relish the chance to go and push their boundaries and out of their comfort zone and see how, all these life experiences have taught them things that will benefit them in adventure. And then adventure can, there's a kind of dance between adventure and life. Yeah, so I see, even though we're really different, I just see so many parallels of kind of opportunity really in what you write about. And and the women you meet, and like Tim was saying about when you had that when you were with a woman and you spent a whole night not talking about men. I love that. Sorry, I'm taking over, but you had mentioned that as well, didn't you, Tim?
Yeah, and I thought it was fun, but Joe, take over.
Sorry,
you go with this. Like I said, I'm not going to be that guy. Like this is your. But I suppose the guy perspective on this from me is I think blokes have been locked into this like that competitive version of adventure, and I think it's actually women who are showing a lot of men that there's another way of doing it. And I love that thing about creative adventures rather than competitive adventures. Like there's a reason, there's a reason that Adventurous Inc. didn't go to the tip of Everest until this book, which is all about how Sylvia got to the top of Everest on her own terms as a woman, and she actually did that surrounded by loads of ex-Navy SEALs who couldn't do it. And that's why this is the sort of narrative that we talk about in Adventurous Inc. because it's about diversity, isn't it? There's place for everyone out there. And the sooner we see that, and the sooner we start to move towards that, the better. But so we need people like both of you to show us that. So yeah, thank you from. I'm sure you often hear it from the room, but thank you from the guys as well. Guys need to see that there is another way, and it's not just survival.
Yeah, I know. And I know I should probably make a note that obviously Joe and I will talk about gender quite a lot, and we're both cis hetero women, so that's the experience that we both have, and I'm not trying to be exclusionary when I do talk about that. It's just that's the experience I have, and it's also the reason why it's so important to the story is because the things that Joe and I have already talked about, the way that people treat us and things they say to us, it's based on our appearance. We appear like women, and so then that is the way that the world receives us, and that's kind of more what it's about, is that it's not just that I have the experience of being a woman, it's I have the experience of being received as a woman, and that is the barriers that we both know that we face when we go out. Those are the things that people are going to talk to us about, is just they don't let us open our mouths before they tell us that what we're doing is stupid or dangerous, or do we need help carrying our stuff or whatever. So
like
that's my note on gender. I'll just get that out of the way.
Yeah, like the guy but also youth as well. Like you said, you're in short denims, you had blonde hair, you had your dreads up.
I always have my nails done in a funky color. Always makes
you have your nail varnish off, and he just And he just looked at you and he made assumptions about you, and
Yeah, incapable.
yeah.
Because purple nail polish tells everyone that's incapable. I don't know why.
Yeah, amazing. I have a question. How went with the writing of the book? Were you every night writing notes? Did you carry a notebook with you? Were you doing voice messages on your phone? You know, how did you do the process of getting because the book is so beautifully written. It just has such a lovely pace. You know, you go scary, big, intimate, joyful. You know, it has such a lovely pace, and that pace carries through every single adventure. You know, it's just so beautifully done. Were you writing every night? Were you thinking when you wrote your notes, I may one day write a book, or were you writing a diary for yourself? You know, the process.
Yes, I did write notes just on my phone, because obviously traveling so light, you use your phone for everything. You know, it's your map, it's your camera, and all that. So yeah, I did take notes on my phone. I didn't know for a long time that I ever had a plan to write a book. But I am a writer by trade. I mean, that's what I do, and that's the way that I process things. I'm big into journaling. I write things even if I don't plan on ever sending them to a publisher. You know, I've got loads of articles just saved on my computer that I've never sent to anyone, because that's how I process things. I just write them. Yeah. So I would keep a trip diary while I was out, and then kind of the second I get reunited with my laptop, I sit down, and it's a big session, and it's just how I need to process everything that happened out there. Especially because, you know, as you read, there was a lot of big things that happened out there, and things that I had to work through to kind of come back down to earth when I got back to Scotland. So I would write through it all, and that would be my, like, okay, this happened to you, because you compartmentalize. And that's how I got through a lot of the stuff, you know, with, you know, Morocco obviously being a really big chapter where things were just so out of hand and things were not okay. But I had to make them okay to survive the place. I had to just, you know, it all just kind of had to become normal for me. Like, this is your life right now. Men just chase you in the desert, and you get thirsty and hot, and it's all dangerous and hard, but this is normal. And then get home and yeah, start writing it out. And I just wrote the whole thing. I remember I did it in kind of a one session. I remember looking at the page as I like looking at my notes, and then writing them on the page and going like, oh, that happened? That's real? That's not okay. That's not normal. But at the time I was like, oh, that's so funny. This guy's chasing me and he's not a good runner. Haha. Having a nice little laugh about it. And then when you're in the safety of your home and getting the chance to just write it out for yourself, you know, I didn't send it to anyone, just to write it out and go like, okay, it's not normal, but you did it. So yeah, that stuff sat on my computer for a long time before a publisher chased me down and tried to convince me to actually write it into a book. So I had a lot to work with when I finally got a book deal and started doing it.
Yeah.
You did have a lot to work with. I mean, like, so you've got big things happening in terms of like terrifying adventures and genuinely terrifying adventures, like nightmare inducing, I would say. And then you've got those big things of being the woman out there on your own, and the stuff that happened with that. But it comes like Joe says, it comes across beautifully, and the writing is fabulous. I love there's a couple of lines, and there's a couple of lines. I love the one about, just so you know, that being stung by a thousand thorns when you pumped with adrenaline still feels like being stung by 1,000 thorns. And I'm like, yeah, and that's beautiful. Like, does that come to you while you're there, or did it come to you afterwards as you're trying to put it together?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because without the notes that I take, you can easily forget it. You know, I mean, you'll both know what it's like to go on a long-term trip. So much stuff happens. You can't remember every bush that you got stung by or whatever, you know, like it just, if you don't have really good notes, I think you do miss those nuances. And that's why I think it's good that I always wrote immediately after the trip. I didn't go back onto my life and then try to remember it. Yeah, I think I do come up with it as I go. I think, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of sarcasm in the book. And I also have to say, the F-bombs, I assumed that the editors would deal with those. Like, I didn't know actually until I recorded the audiobook that there were so many sweary words still in the book, because like I just wrote the way that I talk. I just kind of wrote it. I was like, oh, this is the point of having a good publisher, is they send in an editor and clean up my garbage work and my bad writing, but they just kind of printed it the way that I wrote it. They didn't really make any changes.
Oh no, it's perfect.
Sorry for the sensitive souls, but not sorry. I think it's fine to swear.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Gosh, you know, if you've just thought, what is that like coming down? I think you can say the F word when you realize it isn't someone that's going to come and attack you. So I think you're very welcome to say the F word whenever. So
yeah, I'm still upset about it, so I stand by that one.
Yeah, I would too.
And hey, we've had Gail Muller on here, so like F bombs, you're fine, you're fine.
Poor
like,
game. Good.
On the spectrum, she's where. And the lucky thing is, I used to send, my mum used to have a subscription, and bless her, she can't read it, but she used to get all the books, and occasionally I would get them given back to me as this one, rude language in it. So don't worry, my mum hasn't read your book.
Okay. All right. Don't tell her that there's an audio version. And that too.
But I mean, like, the places that you went to, it was phenomenal, and because you were making your routes as you went, basically, the amount of times you seem to be crossing an unending boulder field, or wading up a stream to get to some ridiculous mountain pass. I mean, you really were out there, weren't you? It's an impressive resume of adventure. Did you expect to get that in depth with it when you started the project? I guess if you start with Kyrgyzstan, you're like, yeah, you don't really know what you're getting into, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one skill that I did have confidence in, though, at least, was the wilderness. I mean, growing up with the Rockies, you know, I had the wilderness skills, and obviously living in Scotland, you know, any time of year you can have it all in Scotland. So I'm like very used to being wet and lost and on my hands and knees trying to get up something. So the battling nature side of it, and the intensity of the wilderness, you know, the ones where I was several days away from the next village at any point, you know, that was kind of easier for me, I think, just because I had that wealth of experience. And that's something that I think in the beginning of me telling people about my adventures, I think I wanted to get across really clearly, because of course I present quite young, and when I started this, I was in my 20s, and I always wanted to be really clear, like, this isn't beginner level stuff. Like, I think everyone should run across Kyrgyzstan. It's great fun, but I just want to be clear, it's not for the beginner map readers. It's you know, I still massively fucked it up, and I would like to think that I knew what I was doing at the time, and I still made mistakes. So it's yeah, I think, yeah, I was quite lucky that I did know that, and I did have those skills, but it was yeah, it was a great level of intensity, and I quite liked it, because obviously I live a very cushy modern life. You know, I'm always in phone signal. I have a van. I have, you know, a nice place to live. Like, we don't struggle that much if we live in Britain. So putting yourself in a position where there is no phone signal, there's no road, there's nowhere that you can buy things, all the water needs to be treated. You have, you know, that the basics in your life are difficult. It's such a healthy thing to put yourself through that. It is such a healthy thing to go out fully into nature and go, wow, nature is completely the boss of me right now. When you're in the city, you're the boss of nature. You know, we're the ones ruining the climate because we can do whatever we want. We can switch on things and burn oil and whatever. But when you're out there like that and you just have a tiny backpack, the role is back to its natural order, that nature is so much bigger than you. And yeah, I think it's so refreshing. I wish that everyone would go hiking like that. I honestly think the world would be a better place if every wealthy person had to go for a big long distance hike in the wilderness.
Yeah, I like that, because what you say, that you already had those skills, because sometimes you can hear this, oh, I went on an adventure and I knew nothing about it, and I hadn't done this ever before, and I'm a bit like, and so you weren't reckless with it, you know what I mean? You were we all knew that, yes, you made mistakes, but you had altitude issues, or you were really seriously unwell,
Yeah.
like, and you had to go to that hospital, and they were like, when you explained you could kind of be drowning from the inside, I was like, oh God,
Yeah, nice.
but you weren't reckless in any way. You didn't go out there because it was fun to be a beginner. You had trained, and I think that is also an important thing and a message to get across, that because sometimes people go, oh, I went on this thing and I'd never trained, and you go, oh, that is a bit, you are putting yourself in danger, and you're putting people in danger who might need to rescue you. So you were very clear that you had those skills. Yeah. You were very responsible, as an athlete and as an adventurer. You were responsible for yourself, and you were acting in a responsible fashion. Sorry, that sounds really boring, but
no, but that's exactly it. I mean, it's not cute to rely on mountain rescue.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not okay. And especially when you go solo, that if something happens, you do have to be rescued. You don't have a partner that could haul your broken body back to base camp or something.
Yeah.
You have to be a lot more careful. And obviously, like, starting in Kyrgyzstan, where there is no mountain rescue team and no helicopter in the country, then you don't even have that. You don't even have that backup. So you're like, okay, I really have to be careful, because there isn't even a mountain rescue to come get me. But even in the countries that did have it, I mean, New Zealand, Canada, those countries, the mountain rescue work really hard. There are constantly places for them to go, and our wildernesses are really big and scary and dangerous, and people legitimately have accidents. You need to make sure that you're not just relying on that, or you're not being kind of ignorant of the risks. So I was always really aware of the risks, and just aware that while I was alone, the risks were higher. While I was exhausting myself, I was trying to run to this level of exhaustion. That was part of the fun. But knowing that in a state of exhaustion, more mistakes are going to be made. You're more accident prone. Your brain is kind of out of the building half the time. Like, being aware of those things. And I've always really struggled with how to get that across, because, I'm so passionate about telling everyone they should go outside. I really think everyone should go outside. And I really don't think navigation is as scary as most people make it out. I think you can learn to navigate. It's not that hard. And I think everyone should wild camp and trespass if you have to live in England, like whatever, wild camping, the best. So I'm really passionate about encouraging people to do that. And I don't want to be the gatekeeper who says, yeah, but you can't until you learn all these things on an expensive course. I don't think you need that, but you do need to learn a couple of things. Try to always get the balance when I speak to audiences. Like, please do it responsibly. I don't want to be a gatekeeper and say this is only for wealthy people who have, like, had years of experience in courses and whatever. But I don't know how to get the balance right.
No, I know, but I think that was really important. And I think just when you said about like, when you want to quitting is actually harder than carrying on, because if you quit, you've got to backtrack, and then you've got to get to a place to stop, whereas it's just easier to carry on. And
quitting, you've got to figure it out. It wasn't in your plan. And if you're quitting, that means you're already in a crisis. Now you've got a logistical problem in the middle of your crisis. You have to figure out how to get back to the city. And when you're in a crisis, you're going to pick the path of least resistance, and that's just continuing, even if it hurts. You're like, well, whatever, we'll just so I think it's a funny one. I really do applaud people that have turned back, or people that have thrown in the towel when they had to. And I think it's a shame that they don't get really any applause for doing that. There's no one comes home from a mountaineering expedition where they didn't make the summit and people go, well done, and they just say, well, that's a shame. But maybe it's not a shame. It takes a lot of strength to know it's not your day, especially when you go out and do something big. When you've like traveled across the world and you've planned for this and you've trained for this and you've put your heart and soul into it. If it doesn't work out and someone has a good enough relationship with their ego to be able to walk away, I think those people deserve more credit than they get.
Did you, as you kind of, the numbers went up and there was, people were more and more interested, did you feel more pressure with the later ones than you did with the earlier ones? Or
massively. When I went to Kyrgyzstan, I mean, obviously I write in the book about the way that people there said like, no, but I mean, people that I knew, people in my social circle said like, I mean, right before I went, I remember it was an adventure festival, and I won't name drop who said this to me because it was a big name in our industry, and they just went, you know what, there are great stories that come out of failures. And that was the last thing that they said before I went to the airport. And I was like,
Wow.
oh. So there was a lot of that. So I think at the beginning, my only pressure was everyone thinks I'm incapable. And then, yeah, a few years later, suddenly everyone was, how fast are you going to do this one? And, you know, we'd love to run the article when you finish, as in like this guaranteed you're going to be fine and good things are going to happen to you because you've done it, kind of, you know, celebrating you before you've done it. And the risks didn't decrease over time. You know, the things that could have gone wrong that would have been a reason for failure, they were consistent. You know, the environment, their injury, those things, you know, the risk was always there. And yeah, I really did mentally struggle with that. Yeah, especially when I ran across Kyrgyzstan, you know, I just kind of was a foolish girl that did that. And then by the end, I built a career, and I'm very grateful for my career, and I'm very grateful that people follow me and want to hear my stories. But it does come with an assumption that you're capable now, and I always thought in the back of my mind, like, I don't know if I deserve that. Don't assume, like, you know, give me some credit, but not too much.
And you talk more when I follow you on Instagram about how you now need to kind of look after your body with your strength training and your yoga and things like that. Have you found you've changed how you train and how you look after your body and your recovery and things? And, you know, what are your best tips for someone 30 years older?
Yeah, I do take a lot better care now. I think when I started, I obviously had youth on my side, but I also had ignorance on my side, that I just ran like whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And it was amazing. I was in a really good place with running, and I didn't get any bad injuries. But over that time, and something that's come out since the book and it's in the film, is finding out that I had an eating disorder throughout all that time. And I didn't really consciously, like, I knew that I had not a great relationship with or I had a terrible relationship with my body, but I didn't know that I was slowly destroying my health. That was something that I really wasn't aware of. I thought everything that I was going through was completely okay and normal, and I just needed to keep trying to lose weight. And that was something that I did between the expeditions. When I was on the expeditions, I felt so empowered and everything was amazing. I was so grateful for the body that I had. But then, you know, I'd get home and go back to the gym and go back to the building up the strength, make sure I don't get injured. But yeah, these negative feelings would come back up, and it did a lot of damage to my health by doing that. And that's kind of the main message that I have for anyone around using running to lose weight or obsessing over it, is that there's no good that came out of that time and the stuff that I did to my body. Like, there's literally not one benefit. It was, you know, a terrible thing. But anyways, the strength and the yoga, those have been really good pillars for me. So yeah, my top tips would be, you don't want to get injured. So that means taking care of your body, both in that physical sense of, you know, strength training, especially for women doing extra strength training, because it's harder for us to make muscles and keep them. So doing that physical side, but then also the mental and emotional side. And that's something I can say from past mistakes. You know, I obviously wasn't taking good enough care of myself to keep myself out of that destructive behavior. So yeah, my advice on that would definitely be to keep yourself well in all aspects of wellness. Yeah.
And you're very, when you do, and I wasn't necessarily going down the eating disorder question, it was more like the strength training and the yoga and all those poses on the mountains and stuff. But when you do share that, because you've raised that, when you do share it, I think the response is always just so amazing that you're allowing, you know, people will look at you and think, oh, you know, wow, Jenny's being very vulnerable and very honest. And I think it helps so many, particularly women, you know, think, gosh, it's such a brave thing for you to do, and such a generous thing for you to do, to share that on so openly with people. And you know, like you say, you've got to make sure who you follow on Instagram or whatever is really important, and you don't go down, you know, I find myself going down rabbit holes and suddenly thinking, you know, why aren't I in sort of fitness competitions? And then what, you know, because you cannot, you know, I don't want to be a bikini model, you know, that's great for them, but it's not for me. But you know what I mean? It's like, you can go down rabbit holes on Instagram and compare and things. And I think when you do that, it's such a brave, it's just, it's a generous thing. That's what I mean. It's a generous thing that you share that from your heart to other women, because then we can all watch and think, just makes us feel better about ourselves, and know that we're not alone. And I think there must be a lot of athletes who've been given that same message, that if you're thinner, that you'll be necessarily faster. And as you've shown, that's not the case. You know, stronger is you're looking after yourself better. Oh,
I'm back.
It's just like, oh god,
What's the Wi-Fi? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my god, I'm completely bored her now. He's looking at me like really scary.
No, I mean, it's not a comfortable thing for me to do. I mean, it's not a comfortable thing for anyone to hear either. But it was something that I wish women that I looked up to had been honest about with me and with themselves. And I think that, yeah, if we talk about it, we can make it go away. That's kind of my belief, because one thing I found when I started talking about it is that it turned out to be really universal, and it wasn't just women, and it wasn't just young skinny women, it was really everyone. And yeah, that it's so universal really broke my heart first. And then I thought, well, then if it's universal, maybe it's easy to fix, because if we all just say this is stupid, can we all stop? You know, maybe it would help. So, and yeah, as you say, the things in the book, I mean, I was never going to write just a trip diary, like, look at me, I ran across 6 mountain ranges. I have to do it honestly. And, you know, I didn't include things like depression because it was more interesting to write about. It had to be honest. And that was something I always wished that people I looked up to, and books that I'd read when I was younger and films I'd seen, I wish they'd just been honest with me about the full picture, so that when it did happen to me, when I did face anything not going right, I could say to myself, this is totally normal. And you know, so-and-so lives with that, so I could also live with it. But instead, you know, when you're young going through that, you beat yourself up. And yeah, I think so. I was always just going to be honest in the book. I just thought, you know, whatever, it doesn't, like, it's just my life, it's just my book. I'm gonna just say what happened out there. You know, I'm really, really glad that I ran across 6 mountain ranges. It was the best thing I ever did with my life, and I grew so much. And yeah, I like nothing negative to say, but obviously there were things that happened. It's also going through 5 years of my life, you know, COVID happened during that, like, you know, things happened. It's not a cautionary tale on running too far. Like, yeah, I had to put in everything just as honest as it existed. And so the eating disorder stuff, you know, it happened post books, so there's nothing in there about that. But I think a lot of people picked up that I had some problems. And they emailed me about that. And people could stop emailing me about my mental health. That'd be fantastic. It's a weird thing to do. But yeah, so yeah, I think you've got to be honest, because you don't know who's reading that. You know, there's young people reading that. There's people who have never been on it, but you know, there's so many people reading that could get so much from you. And if you're not being completely honest about the full picture of it, you're not helping them. You're not, you know, you're just trying to get people to admire you. And that's not why I wrote the book.
And when you were talking about sort of the post-lockdown, you know, not feeling, and I think so many of us can relate to that, because there was a whole message, certainly in the UK, like on Twitter or X, you know, if you don't come out of lockdown having learnt a language and cleaned your house, decluttered, and have a really good fitness routine, then you haven't made lockdown worth it. And you know, we're all what? I'm just trying to keep my family alive, you know.
Trying not to open any wine before 5 p.m. and that's like my goal right now.
And you shared something that I think a lot of us coming out of lockdown, even though we weren't going to go and run a mountain range in our own sweet way, we were going to do something and feeling like it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, we're all a bit lost in ourselves for a bit.
Yeah, and I thought that was really, really, relatable in that, obviously on different scales, but we could all sort of relate to that and feel, and then as you say, when you shared your feelings with others, it just lightened that load, which yeah,
who knew talking about stuff
who
is really
knew?
useful to humans.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with although you're solo, you meet so many amazing people, don't you? Just obviously you meet some that you wouldn't want to meet. None of us would want to meet some of them. But some of the relationships and some of those moments, like when you just were with that woman and, the father wasn't talked about, which I think is such, I mean, my children know who their father is and they have a relationship, but you know what I mean? It's just, it's so nice that she didn't necessarily want to speak where he was.
We're not defined by it.
Yeah, and exactly. And you had those lovely moments where you're solo, but you're not solo. You're on your own, but you're with so many other people that share so much with you. And I think, and do you think that by being solo, you open yourself up to those really special moments with people that otherwise might keep away if you were with a partner, male or female?
Yeah, that's my belief, is that solo you're very vulnerable, and that makes you very approachable. And people are so, like, worldwide, people are really worried about people being alone. Like, we're so afraid of, being alone equates to loneliness, which is true. But when someone is seen alone, there's this there's a bit of a crisis to like go get that person and make sure that they're not lonely and that they are okay. And it's a very lovely thing. So being that vulnerable person out there, people would rush over to me frequently and make sure I was fine. And how nice is that? And if I had someone with me, they wouldn't worry about whether or not I was fine. And I wouldn't be very approachable because I'd be speaking my language with someone, and I wouldn't look like I needed help, and I wouldn't look like I needed someone else to talk to or wanted someone else to talk to. So yeah, you're very approachable when you're on your own, and I think that was the biggest advantage. I mean, there were a lot of advantages of doing it solo, but the biggest one was like people's just desperate need to come talk to me, which made them come talk to me, which was great.
And I love
that one of the things that people came and talked to you about was like, but don't go to that place over there because they're not nice people there. And it's that thing and about like everyone fears the next Pueblo over, and it's like, oh, you shouldn't go and speak to that. And aren't we a strange bunch that we've got this conflicting thing that we like our own community and we'll welcome a solo person into it, but as soon as it gets threatening or then it has to be a them instead of an us. And I got a lovely sense of us from the book, and you were kind of weaving all these uses together.
Yeah, it was kind of funny and then also kind of sweet. Yeah, that I was so welcomed everywhere I went because I was so foreign that there wasn't an opinion about me. Usually when I travel, I kind of switch between saying I'm from Scotland or Canada because both of them are true, and I might be carrying one passport. Scotland's amazing because a lot of people haven't heard of it. And when you say you're from a country that someone hasn't heard of, then suddenly they don't have a reason to have an opinion about you. So they can't decide whether or not they're scared of you, or they do or don't like your government or whatever. And it's such a cool thing. I mean, obviously being Canadian, when I use that one, I'm so privileged. Their instant opinion is that they love you and that you're a very safe person and that you'll be very nice. And so I would get welcomed everywhere I went, either way. But then I would hear the opinions about the next town down the road, and I can't believe you'd be out here alone where everyone is so dangerous and everyone's so murdery. You're obviously from a place where no one ever gets murdered. And I'd be like, well, I'm a woman, so everywhere in the world is dangerous for me, so I might as well just be here. It was a really funny human experiment, that one. And it always seems to take me a little while to figure out that, at first when they say, oh, the next town is a really dangerous one, I go, oh no, because like there's no other way to change my route. I have to go through this dangerous town, and I would get so worked up about it. And then I get there and they'd be really nice and they'd be like, oh, you're so lucky you're here where no one murders, but trust me, the next town, all murders. And it kept happening until finally I was like, Jenny, you know this. You know that everyone around the world thinks that the next town over is literally the worst, or, you know, and in my country, it might just be that we don't like their hockey team, but in this one, it's that they assume the rest of them are murderers. And it's just a global truth, which is a shame.
Yeah, and you do have a gun with you, don't you? Like,
yeah, always ask for the gun. Yeah, not super keen on having to have guns.
no.
And I didn't need one.
No.
So an important point that we need to keep remembering.
Yes, exactly.
It's almost like there's similar threads there, aren't there? Like about people being generally nice people, and like we can be more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We can push ourselves through, and I think that's one of the great things about the book is it is that it really has this core of scotching lots of those narratives that people carry around in their heads about themselves or about others. And you've opened yourself up and been vulnerable out there, and vulnerable in how you've told that story to kind of quash lots of those little niggly stories that we carry around. And it's powerful because of that, and I think it's important because of
that. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, women, we hear it all the time about how dangerous the world is, because we're taught from a very young age that the world is too dangerous for us. You know, like a very inappropriately young age, we start getting told that the world is dangerous. And I just think, how could you leave your front door every morning if you really believe the world is just full of bad people? I mean, I'm not saying there aren't bad people. I'm not saying that women don't face more danger than their peers, but the world is full of more good than bad. That's, you know, we literally couldn't leave our houses if that wasn't true. So we have to keep reminding ourselves that. And then also the internal one about yourself and what you're made of. Like, you can't go through your whole life. I mean, I only know this now, but you can't go through your whole life just believing that you have these predestined set of limits on you, that you'll never be better than that you'll never achieve more than whatever these limits are that you believe in. I mean, you got to go out and find out what you're made of, or else, you know, I don't want to ever say that someone's wasted their time or their life, but I think that's my biggest fear now that I've done what I've done, is now that I know I was capable of more than I thought, my biggest fear would be not finding out where my limits were and just, you know, having a cushy life and never finding out that there was more out there for me. Yeah, that's a thing that I'm most scared of now.
it. It sounds like exactly what Joe's doing. Well, that I'm guessing that in essence, Joe, that was that denial of boxing yourself in is what your story's about as well. And I'm guessing that's the resonance that you saw in Jenny's story and why you chose it for it.
Yeah. And I think for me as well, I think as you get older as a woman, you're also being told, well, it's now you're just too old to do those things, you know, and so you're being boxed back in by people's perception of age. And obviously there are definitely you know, factors in terms of, like you said, you had your youth on your side, and you know, you could just keep running, and we have to think of, you know, being stronger and rest and recovery and all that. So there are physical things that do happen as you age that we can't deny. But there is a perception that older men, older women have to kind of go back and limit themselves again. And, you know, and
that's if older women are thought about at all.
Yes.
They're kind of invisible.
Yes. Anyone, you know, thinks that, you know, yeah, exactly. If they're even thought about it at all. But for me, that's why I'm always searching out for stories of, you know, women who are doing really cool things, who are older, younger and older, just to keep saying no, keep stopping those limiting factors in my, you know, in my head, you know, keeping opening up, you know, the possibility. And you find it all over. And that's what I'm always looking for. And so yeah, your book just really, even though we're different ages, it just really resonated in that, you know, what's possible, and but on a really human level, you know, so that, yeah. like even when you sort of made a mistake and you were like, oh my God, this is like at the start, it's all gone wrong, but you could still do, still turn it around or whatever. And I think that really does help people know that it isn't smooth, that it's not smooth. There will be, problems, but to find a solution to them. So yeah. And there was something else and I've completely forgotten it, which Prit would so totally understand. Yes, I can't remember. It's gone through my head, and I'll remember it about 9 o'clock tonight and think,
Yeah, send me a text.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have remembered it by the time we have our evening's conversation, Joe. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that both of you do is that you present this upside, don't you? You present these magical moments where kind of it all comes together, and it is worthwhile, and all of a sudden you realize why you've pushed through those boundaries, and why you've put yourself through that. And it's because you get to this place where you flourish and you thrive, and it might have been hard getting there, but actually you both of your books, and they're both, and they're all helping us see that upside as well. It's not just being vulnerable about the downside. It's, hey, this was amazing, and that's important. We need more amazement and awe in our life, don't we?
Oh yeah, I felt with Jenny's book, I was there. Okay, not quite wanting to be in that river, I was literally going, oh my God, this is, she obviously made it because she's written about it. So I knew you were fine. But yeah.
Well, actually, the audiobook, I had to record it kind of before I'd processed that whole scenario. It was less than a year later that I was in a studio in London having to read that passage, and I hadn't gone back and visited it. I just wrote that chapter and just went, oh, not a good day in Jenny's life, hit send. And then, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't know that I had to do an audiobook. So when I did it, I got really worked up in the studio, and the producer had to keep on telling me to just get up and go for a walk, because when your voice, like the air is really high up because you're super nervous. I mean, it was that I was right back in the river. I was upset, even though I knew I lived. Like, I know how the book ends. I wrote it. I'm here. And I was still like, it took us all morning to get that bit recorded because I got so upset about it.
Wow.
Yeah, you gotta process these things when you get home. You have to unpack those bottles that you shove down.
Yeah. Well, Cal Major, she often talks about the post-expedition blues and sort of processing what happens. And sorry, I didn't mean to bring up something really awful.
No, I'm good with it now. I've had a couple of years now, and that experience made me realize that I thought I'd dealt with it enough, but I clearly hadn't dealt with it enough. And so I did go back, and I now I'm very intentional about processing. And Cal post-adventure blues, we were talking about that the other night, and you've got to work through it. You can't just put it in that bottle of ugly things that you don't want to look at and put it away. If you deal with it, and you deal with the things that happened on your expedition, and you just say, I'm okay now, so let's look at it. Let's, for me, it's journaling. That's how I like to deal with it. But, it could be therapy, it could be art, it could be whatever it is that is your thing. You do have to open those bottles and deal with it. And I found out that day in the studio in London that I'd ignored that one, that I just gone, too ugly, don't want it.
Yeah. So,
and you can't do that, because then the next time you're crossing a river and you're totally safe, you suddenly start to cry, and you think, why am I crying? You have to deal with these things. So I did. So don't worry. I'm good now. I can swim in rivers and everything's fine.
Yeah. But on the adventure, you have a system to be able to compartmentalize it then. If something goes wrong, you just have to put it aside then.
Yeah, you just have to be really stoic. And I think stoicism is maybe not a good way to live your whole life, but it's a good way to live through a moment. And so you just say, kind of just facts on the table are that ugly thing is currently not happening. It's over. There's no point worrying about something that isn't currently happening to you. There's no point being upset, because you have to keep going. You can't fall apart here. You can, and you will fall apart somewhere, but can it please be at your house when you get home? And so you do just kind of have to say to yourself, you know, like a bit of a chin up, you know, just be a stoic person and just say, I'm not going to get emotional, but I do promise myself that I'll get emotional later. I think that's the difference with being a full stoic, is I just say, like, I'm stoic today. I'm not going to get emotional today, because being emotional right now would not serve me. It would not make me safer. And that, you know, we already talked about safety. That's got to be always at the forefront of every decision I make out there, is, you know, keeping myself safe. Having a little breakdown, it's just not going to do it. So I have to promise to myself, I will cry about this. Like, I deserve a cry about this, and I need to. It's important. That cry is going to be really good, but this is not the time and place, because I'm on the edge of a mountain, and if I start crying and then my legs go wobbly, I will fall down the mountain, and that's not so good. So that's the way I deal with it. Is like a part-time stoic, holiday stoic.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. That is such a good way
Just
of
never don't do the cry. Try to schedule your cry if you can.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. I could have, I can really see how that would be very, very helpful. I'm going to put that into practice at times when I cry, and just say, not right now, not right now. You can cry later, but not right now.
Call me crying someday and be like, I'm crying about something that happened last week.
Yeah. No, that's such a I'm sure everyone that tunes into this will find that a really valuable lesson. I love that. Thank you.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think it's about cycles, isn't it? And it's about ebb and flow. And sometimes you're strong and sometimes you're weak. And that's how Joe started out describing the book, isn't it? It is about those ups and those downs. And that's life. And I think the more people like you guys help everyone understand that life isn't a constant, and it's up and it's down, and there will be good and there will be bad, and we can deal with that, and that's the thing of beauty, and I think it's I think it's fun. And I love we've come to the end of our hour on that. Never don't do the cry. I love that. I think Joe, I can't thank you enough for choosing the book. It's been fab. It was
my pleasure.
And yet, I mean, Jenny, thank you for putting yourself out there in every sense of the word, and sharing that with us in the book, and sharing it with us now, because it's a gift and a joy, and
well, I'm really humbled, honestly. It's really grateful for this. Thank you, guys.
No, honestly, for me, it's just like, just such serendipity and such an honor to be speaking to someone who made me think I could do something, and not as big as
you did. And you do the things,
you know, but yeah, so it's just such an honor, and
it is.
I couldn't be more grateful. Sorry. Oh God.
No, you're gonna make me go.
Oh, scheduled it for another time.
Don't apologize, Joe. I did mean to say at the start. So Joe was being very humble when she talked about Jenny inspiring her to do her little coast to coast thing. So Joe was being very generous there, and not saying she is the first woman who has paddled on a paddleboard from coast to coast in England. I mean, like, it's a huge thing, and that's it speaks to that thing about, like, when you put these stories out there, you don't know who it's going to touch.
Yeah, it's everything I ever wanted out of this experience for me, was to get someone else to find her strength. So you're amazing, Joe. I love what you do.
Thank you.
So I am so glad we've had an episode where it's not me crying. It's always me crying. Joe, thank you for crying for us. Right.
Oh, yeah, I'm good at that.
Thank you both. It's been brilliant. And yeah, well, we're going to do it all again in a month's time. So yeah, thank you both. Hang on, let me put us all back on the view so we can all see each other. I will see you both again. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.